they have completely used the pandemic, anticipating, hoping perhaps that nobody would rise against these laws because now they have become laws. Uh, their calculations were wrong. This time, the lower castes are also standing with the higher castes because they realize it is a battle of the political economy of India. And if they lose it, then it's all gone for them.
Hi, my name is Jason Bosch, and today we're doing a show that's actually a co-production and partnership between several different groups. One of them is I run a show called If We Were Honest on YouTube, and it's an interview program. We've also got a program called Outside the Box with Jason Losados, and he's going to be with us today. And Yogeeta Mistry, and the show is called Unbecoming You. We all have YouTube channels where we interview people, but we came together today because I've interviewed a woman by the name of deeptidatt, who's become a good friend of mine. And she'd been posting a lot of stuff about what's been going on in India. And me being an American, obviously we're not getting very good news about what's actually happening over there. And so I'm coming at this from a fairly ignorant point of view in terms of what's actually happening on the ground. And so I wanted to learn more about it. So I reached out to Deepti and said, hey, we should do a show. And it turns out Yogeeta had also suggested something similar. So deeptidatt has a website, civilianaire.in, where she blogs. Deepti is a writer, director, and producer in India's music, television, and film industry. And she actually helped us get a couple of our guests. And our guests are Amandeep Sandhu and Devdan Chaudhuri. And Deepti, do you want to real quick just kind of tell me a little bit about these two authors that you brought in?
Sure. That's peacocks. That's our peacocks right there. Should we wait?
No, I love it.
Okay.
Little peacock action.
Peacocks.
I love it.
They started about 4 a.m, and there's a whole crew of them here, babies as well. So Amandeep Sandhu is a published author, book writer. Devdan Chaudhuri is a published writer, book author. They both also write journalistically, and they've been very keenly following, tracking, writing, speaking about what's happening in India with the farmers' protests. So I felt like we all needed a voice that was, from directly as a representative of the protests and what's happening there. So, which is why I felt it was important to have these two gentlemen on board with us. And they have a long history going back with the kind of work that they've been doing. So it's pretty valuable having their voice participating in this talk.
And we've also got some video from Navkiran Nath. Am I saying that correctly?
Navkiran Nath, yes.
Navkiran Nath, yes.
Yep, yes.
From Tikri. And you want to just say a little bit about who she is?
Sure. So Amandeep is who put me in touch with Navkiran. Navkiran is a youth activist. She's actually a doctor. She's a dentist. Like everybody else there, she's come away from her life, shut down her life to be there in Tikri. She's on the Tikri border. The two big encampments are in Singhu border and Tikri border, which are both major highways into Delhi, major commercial routes, major highways into Delhi. So these are where the two big encampments are, and with thousands more joining every day, whoever they'll let in. There are police blockades around all the state borders, allowing people in. So these are the two big encampments that are there. Navkiran is in Tikri. She's a dentist. She's a youth activist. She has been there from the first day. She came there with her family. Her mother is part of a women's group that is working there. Her father is one of the farmer union leaders, one of the unions of over 600 as of now that we know of, who are part of this protest. There are over 600 unions participating in this protest, and that's farmers unions, workers unions, teachers unions, lawyers unions. I mean, any profession you can think of. This is an India-wide It's been called the Kisan Morcha. So a morcha is much more than a protest or a rebellion. A morcha is it's like they say themselves. There's been many statements made of this, and I'm going to say it in Hindi. And the sentence is, हम यहाँ कुछ मांगने नहीं आए हैं, हम अपना हक लेने आए हैं, which means we are not here to beg or ask for anything. We are here to demand our rights. Hak means like our right, our context. So we're not here to ask or beg for anything. We are here to demand our rights. That's what's happening at these protests. And they've said very clearly they're not leaving until the government repeals the 3 farm bills, 1. And 2 is well, there are many terms that have been set, but the second one that's relevant to mention here is that all political prisoners are freed. All political prisoners and dissidents that have been arrested over this past year is one of their terms, non-negotiable, is to free all political prisoners and dissidents.
Yeah.
So that is, Navkiran and her family are one of the founders also of a newspaper called Trolley Times, which they've begun just a few days ago, and it's already the largest growing newspaper in the world. They've managed to get it out and have over 14,000 subscribers online, and it's growing exponentially. And they did this to counter what they call the Godi media, which is the national media, the mainstream media, which is pretty much mounted a disinformation campaign. They're trying to pigeonhole this as being, for instance, a communist instigated something, or a nationalist, separatist instigated something. They've blamed the Khalistani movement, which is a separatist movement. None of it is true. None of it is true. They've said they're trying to create divisions between the Hindu, Muslims, Sikh, all of this. None of it is true, because if you see footage from Tikri, if you speak to the people who are there, including Navkiran, as she has herself said in her answers, it's an all India united front that is protesting here. It's across religions, it's across belief systems, it's across, groups, unions, you name it. It's an all India unified front. Yeah.
So we had Navkiran record some video and send it to us based on some questions that we had asked. And
Yes.
And one of the things I wanted to do before we start this show, this is pre-recorded, but I wanted to address something, because I know a lot of people in America don't get their information from directly from the source, so they have to go through corporate media outlets. And one of the things, there's actually kind of a background to this, but when I started to look into what's actually happening, and looking up videos and whatnot, and I saw this image kept coming up and on the screen, which were these Indian protesters with the red flag and the hammer and sickle. And I was thinking, oh, that's not a good way to sell what you're doing to the American people, because there's a long history in America of very anti-communist sentiment, which a lot of it's actually not, there's a lot of issues with that. I'll just leave it at that. That's a whole nother show right there. I myself am not a communist. I'm not a Marxist. I don't belong to any political party. In fact, I have a lot of libertarian sympathies actually, but I'm anti-capitalist. So it's complicated. But I want people to understand, as they listen to these interviews and to watch this, and especially as they watch the US media about what's happening, is that you're looking at this through a lens, just like you're looking at this through a lens, but you have to I believe in going to the source and finding out what the actual farmers are saying themselves. I think that's going to be your best bet in actually understanding what's happening. And I also wanted to address that, just the knee-jerk reaction people might see if they see a bunch of people with with the flags and everything, is there are actually quite a few different groups that are involved with this, correct, Deepti?
Yes.
What role do the communists play, and what role do other places? You want to give me kind of a quick
Sure.
just introduction into this as people come? And I actually asked the question on the show, but I wanted to go say a little bit more about it before the show started.
Sure. There are over 600 groups of people involved in this, unions, workers' unions, farmers' unions. Both of them did speak to this, and I just mentioned it to you as well. 600 groups of unions and workers' organizations that we know of, and there may be many more. So in the northeast of India, there are groups, there are workers groups, there are farmers groups, there are various different groups that are Marxist, that do function on a Marxist belief system or structural system, however you say. Like you, neither am I. I don't affiliate to any party line, no left, right, up, down, nothing at all. So I totally understand where you're coming from. Our approach, I hope, is journalistic. I'm aware that there is footage that is being circulated around the global media or international newscasts, which is using footage from, I think it was in Kolkata, where there was a big morcha or a march, morcha being a march or a protest, where there was a group of Marxist, communist, farmers' unions, workers' unions that did come out. And like is happening with the national media, with the Godi media, what they call the Godi media over here, they're trying to do everything possible to discredit what's happening in Delhi. They're doing everything possible because they're failing. They've failed. They have nothing to say in the face of this protest, which is countrywide, united, overwhelming, demanding that the government repeal laws that favors privatization instead of the people and the farmers. We are all India-wide united with the farmers. There's nobody that's not standing with the farmers in their demands. So this footage being circulated, I believe it's part of the disinformation campaign. The same is happening in India, which is, finding any in they can to break up the movement or discredit it or avert people from looking further into it by saying it's communist or it's this or it's that or it's separatist or it's Khalistanis. All of those accusations are false. It's all untrue. Everybody is united. Everybody. Within it are people with radically polarized belief systems otherwise who have also bunged in, because we all stand behind the farmers. Everybody in India stands behind the farmers and what their demands are and why they're encamped there for now over a month, living on highways in open encampments on behalf of all of us.
Yeah, and so for me, I'm not a communist, but I respect everyone's right in their own country to even, be a communist or be part of whatever political group that you are. And I think that there's this idea that somehow like we in America have a right to tell, people in other countries that they can't be a part of this or that group. And I don't agree with that at all. But I stand 100% behind the farmers and what they're doing, which is why I'm doing this show, even though I know that there are probably some political philosophies within those groups that I don't agree with. And I think we need to have a little bit more nuanced and more just a deeper understanding of all the dynamics that are involved in these situations, because right now it appears that the farmers are being dispossessed, and it's part of a larger, it actually connects to things that are happening here in the States and in the UK and all around the world. I mean, this is part of this global program to, going back to the enclosure laws. I mean, this is a process that's been ongoing for a very, very long time, and to recognize it as such. So,
yeah.
So we'll go ahead and start the show here, but I wanted to say those few words for the beginning, and thanks a lot, Deepti, and we'll see you,
Jason.
We'll see you in the pre-recorded. So thank you for joining us, and I want to thank our authors and partners in helping to put this show together, as well as Derek Brose of The Conscious Resistance, who's helping us to get this out as well. This has really been a team effort to put this together, but we really feel like that the people are not getting the right information about what's happening on the ground, and hopefully this program will help us to understand a little bit better. So thank you. Amandeep Sandhu is the author of 2 novels, Sepia Leaves from 2008 and Roll of Honor from 2012. He also wrote Panjab, Journeys Through Fault Lines in 2019. In addition, he also has an ebook called Bravado to Fear and Abandonment, Mental Health and COVID-19 Lockdown. Aman's essays and short stories have appeared in various magazines and websites. Devdan Chaudhuri is the author of the novel Anatomy of Life, and he's also a poet. He lives in Calcutta. And also with us is UK activist Piers Corbyn, and we've got a nice little panel for you here with a diverse group of people. So it should be a great show. Thanks for joining us.
The question I would have to start with, if you all are okay with it, is this concept of miri piri, which you're the person who introduced me to it, and what is the context for it at the protest? How is it relevant and how it plays out?
Worldwide, we have a sense that religion and politics should not mix. We have had histories in various parts of the world where when politics and religion mix, then bad things happened, especially the Protestant Reformation in England in the 1500s. But it is around that time that the Sikh religion was also formed, and it grew over 10 masters. They came and they gave direction to the community. And they proposed actually that as an individual, your spiritual and your temporal journeys are together. So religion and politics, in that sense, are not separate from each other. In fact, the whole religion, the Sikh religion, was imagined to be a religion which fights for justice and which creates equality. So the sixth Guru, Guru Har Gobind, he gave the idea of miri piri, miri meaning temporal and piri meaning spiritual. And he gave two swords for that. He said one sword is the sword for temporal justice, and one sword is for the spiritual progress that you need to make. And the Sikh religion has it at its heart, this idea. That is why when, say, the idea of Western secularism comes in contact with Sikhism, secularism can't understand what is really going on here, because secularism looks at things in a binary, that the church and the state have to be separate. But the Sikh religion has it both together. So that plays a big role. The Sikh religion, especially one of the newest religions in the world, and also a religion which has been in crisis all the time. You must notice where this religion was formed. It was formed in the Punjab region. The Punjab region is actually the ancient Indus Valley civilization. So this is a region which is between the East and the West. It is between the Orient and the Occident. We try to impose either Oriental thought process on the Indus Valley and it doesn't help us, or we try to impose the Occidental, rationalism binary onto this and it doesn't work. This region, I personally feel, that work is still pending. It needs to be theorized for itself as it is. Unfortunately, now there are 5 nations in this region, so I don't know anybody could take up that kind of a project. But it is a different kind of a thinking. And the religion was formed actually to protect the interests of the society against whoever is wicked and unjust. So it is not against a particular religion. It is not formed making a me and the other. It is formed in some ways, though even that is not a good definition. But if we have to look at English language, perhaps monism is what the religion is about. So not monotheism, monism. But the core concept is, of course, that every Sikh believes that they have a battle to fight on ground against injustice, against inequality, and they have a spiritual progression to make.
And this is playing, this is very much a foundation, if you will, or a baseline for what is fueling these protests. Would you say that a statement like faith is fueling these protests would be appropriate to make?
Yes, the Sikh faith is playing a big role. Though the protest is pan-Indian, there are people of all faiths together in it. It's a huge movement which has taken over the whole country. But Yeah, in some ways, because Punjab is leading it and Punjab is a majority Sikh region. So, in that sense, the Sikh faith is playing a role here because it doesn't, you can't catch it. You can't trap it in a label. It is eclectic in that sense. I mean, this whole concept of Miri Piri is eclectic. So, it is playing a role, you know. Of course, the cadre, the unions, which have actually put up this whole movement, the farming unions all over the country, uh, especially in Punjab. Their leadership is oriented, is tilts also towards Marxism, towards socialism, towards uh, that kind of a point of view, which asks you for a revolution. That's the thesis of that kind of thinking. But the cadre is mostly Sikh. So very interestingly, in when you go down to the ground and you look at how the protests happen, there is a lot of Sikh symbolism that plays a role. And in that sense, the Sikhs are, they have the whole history of 500 years where they have laid their life, they have been martyrs, they have fought for a cause, they have lost, they have won. But all of that is heroic in many ways. Yes. So, as a model of heroism, yes, it does play a role.
Great, great. There is, this is a well-known part of our history is that Alexander the Great, as he was known as Sikandar here from our side, conquered the known world at that time and reached Punjab, where that was it. That was the end of him, wasn't it? He met King Porus in Punjab, and that was the end of his world conquest.
So, I mean, Punjab, the region again, right from the Spinghar Mountains, which are now in Afghanistan, through the Pakistan area, and the Khyber passes in the Spinghar Mountains, and then there's the Pakistan region, and then there is this India Punjab now, which was partitioned in 1947. This region, actually, if you look at it geographically, it has been the gateway for Central Asia to come to the Indian subcontinent. So these were the people who were in between. So they have forever been defending, the subcontinent from them. Of course, the Europeans came to India also through Kerala. They came through Devdan side. They came through Bengal, But these conquests have been about 3,000 years long. And the Scythians, the White Huns, the Mongols, the Eurasians, Persians, everybody came in through this path. And of course, they didn't all go back. They also stayed back. They mingled with the population here. And that's why, in my loose understanding, Punjab is a great genetic pool, actually. Yeah. There's somebody from everywhere in this place, But the point of being a gateway is that you have to defend. You are forced to defend. And so the sense of resilience and the sense of fighting back against any hegemony has been very, very strong. So that's a culture of the people. This resistance and resilience is a culture of the people there. On top of it, in the last 500 years, we bring in the Sikh religion. And so it makes a very good combination. These people are already hardy. They are already trained fighters. And then you give them a religion which inspires them for an equal and just living. So it becomes a nice thing. In fact, Punjab region is the one which gave us the flowering tree of Sikhism in some way.
Yeah. Yeah. So very quickly, Yogeeta, this is something if you could speak to, I'd love to hear it too, because it's come up twice now, where, when we say revolution, the word revolution literally means a whole turn. So revolution means a turn going back to the point it began from, right? And semantics, as we know, the words matter so much right now. So when we say Inqilab Zindabad, are we saying, and this is a question to either of you, are we saying long live the revolution, or does Inqilab actually imply uprising?
Okay, I speak mainly Gujarati. So inqilab, does that actually mean revolution? If you do a word for word translation?
That's the same question I'm asking.
Okay. Well, if it does mean revolution, I'm not 100% sure. So I'd have to put that to Amandeep and Devdan because my mother tongue is Gujarati. So I'm assuming is that Hindi or Punjabi?
You mean inqilab?
Yes.
Is it? I think it means both, actually, revolution and uprising, because somehow a revolution is also an uprising to change authority. Ultimately, the objective of a revolution is to change who is ruling you, and to make a change in the authority and a change in laws. This is what, so it has to be an uprising against some force in order to fulfill better laws and better ways of living. So this is what, it is both because revolution has to be an uprising. Otherwise, it cannot be a revolution.
Yeah, but when you look at the word revolution, etymologically, if I can get my words out, I mean, if you look at the word, it does mean to go back. In etymology, means to go backwards in like regression, retrograde. And always means to go back. And revolution, I think we've been conditioned with so many things, especially with the way we speak and words and how, the words are almost casting spells on us. But revolution means to go around in a circle. And I know when I was creating my playlist and starting to do these types of talks and interviews and conversations, I almost called it revolution. And I thought, hang on, you just take the word RE, you just take the letters RE off the word revolution and you've got evolution. And I think at the moment, we're trying to evolve, or we need to evolve as a humanity. We don't want to be going round in circles. History has repeated itself too many times, and history doesn't repeat itself. It's human beings. It's the people, it's the megalomaniacs in charge who want to keep repeating their own playbook because that's what's happening. They've got their playbook. They know what works. Divide and conquer is the thing that mainly works. And they keep using that tool time and time and time again, even with the COVID thing. Who's getting the vaccine, who isn't, who's wearing the mask, who isn't. It's the whole divide and conquer. So revolution for me is the wrong word to use. We should be thinking about evolving. We should be thinking about, and even the word anarchy. One of my good friends is a linguist. And we've been taught that anarchy means, maybe almost what the word revolution we think would mean, and anarchy just means, not to get too esoteric, it means anti-archon. If you look at the etymology of the word, we need more anarchy. We need more rising up against the entities, who are forcing us into a corner, which is what is happening, almost like rabbits in headlights. We've got nowhere to go. So I think the words that we use, I think is hugely, hugely important because, again, I don't want to get too esoteric, but words have a vibration. Words have a spirituality, words have a meaning, and it can really influence our psyche. So for me, it's all about, yes, let's be an anarchy. Any kind of CHY, any kind of hierarchy, monarchy, any of these kind of CHY words, we need to try and get away from. So my whole point of view is that we need to start talking about, let's evolve as a humanity. Let's leave behind this kind of ego consciousness that has separated us. Let's start coming together in unity, culture, religion, color, all these things, how we've been divided. We need to now put that aside and really evolve and start to unite and come together. I think that is what we're being not forced to do, but there's a message in everything. There's a message in everything. And I think one of the messages for me, in terms of what is happening with this whole COVID, is that it's bringing people together that wouldn't ordinarily come together. Ordinarily, we would not be having this conversation if it hadn't been for what is happening in the world right now. And I think we need to all take that on board and break down the barriers.
Yeah, going back to Inqilab Zindabad, of course, it's Hasrat Mohani who came up with the phrase, and it's Inqilab and Zindabad, both are Urdu words. And Inqilab in that sense can mean, in Urdu, it can mean both uprising and revolution. So I think Bhagat Singh, because he was socialist, so he used it in the sense of revolution because the left, the Marxists are very keen on the revolution, but I think it could also very well mean uprising, like in the present context in these protests. It means an uprising, and it is an uprising which is going on.
Great what you just said, Yogeeta, and everybody. Thanks, Amandeep. And that struck a chord with me when you were saying about the revolution, take off the R and its evolution, and that's where we are now. We're actually, I think it is going into quite a spiritual thing, whereby it is an evolution of consciousness and an awakening, a quickening, in fact, yeah, and that's evident all around the world. And I think what springs to my mind is when you said revolution. Is a revolving door. I talk a lot about that in my work, that a revolving door, we seem to be going round and round in a revolving door, going through the same things all the time. There's an uprising and then it becomes stymied or snuffed out by the next leader who is also ethically compromised. So as I said yesterday, I believe that we need a whole new map. And there's times I like revolving doors. I've gone round in quite a few of them. It's a great experience because there's exit points that you can get out of. But if the revolving door is going so fast and your head's in a spin, you can't get out. And I think we need new maps as well. In the old traditions, they used to do a bicycle wheel and people would get stuck on the spokes. And we have these uprisings and everything, but we still stay in those stuck paradigms. And I think we need to get off the spokes now. And that is what's happening globally, worldwide. And that's why I talk a lot about a new epoch. The word epoch comes from epoche, a Greek word, I'm Greek, which actually means stoppage. So epoch means stoppage, actually. And the analogy I like to give is there is a new birth wanting to take place on the planet now. And the thing in India that we're seeing is a part of that new birth. A whole new system wants to be born and is being stopped by the controllers who will just change the things on the chessboard, put another leader in who's still ethically compromised. Because generally, the further people go up in the political scene, they ethically compromise or they don't get into those positions of power. But the exciting thing about the word epoch is that my analogy is in any pregnancy, there becomes a point where the pregnancy stops and the birth begins. And I believe that's where we are now. Stoppage, and we've got to birth a whole new system into being now that wants to be born and needs to be born before there's actually a miscarriage. I believe the portal is quite small now for people to get through, and I think it's very important to realize that, and I wrote this in my book, I'm just quoting from the book, the situation of rule by gangs of the most deceptively unscrupulous people in a country or on the planet will continue unchallenged until human society is enabled to function benignly and independently of destructive leaders. And I call this enabling point, the inception of manual override. And that is what's happening in India. That's what's happening globally now. People finally realize that without tremendous change and action and creating a whole new system independently of an ethical government, then it'll just keep going round and round and round in that revolving door. Nothing's going to change. So a very powerful point now in our human evolution. But we have to be the midwives and give birth, which is I'm delighted to see in India. That is what they're doing. And unlike England, they are prepared to give their lives for that, which most people don't. They're willing to die for that freedom. And that's where we all must come from now, to take back the controls on this huge worldwide plan to do the big reset, like Yogeeta said, and bring in cashless. And once those things are in, we may never escape. It's a very powerful point.
To both Amandeep and Devdan. So speaking about revolution and just what Jason L spoke to, it does seem a long haul what is happening here. They very clearly stated that this is not stopping until the 3 farm bills are repealed. That's a baseline, very clear message that we are not willing to have any further dialogue until this happens first. And then there are other terms also that have been presented to the government to say that unless these terms are met, one of which also includes freeing all political prisoners and dissidents, which is incredible. So that these terms have been given to the government as baseline to repeal first before there can be any other dialogue. So assuming this is what the government even considers or doesn't consider, that's the question I want to ask you. What do you anticipate can happen with this stalemate that we're in? That here we have over 500 workers' unions and farmers' unions and over 300,000 people encamped outside Delhi, blocking all access to the metro. Will the government relent? Will Modi and Shah relent and repeal these three laws? We have that 1907 example of when they forced the British to repeal the laws. Can that happen again? If that happens, what are the implications for what can happen next? Can it go as far as, can the government fall? Can that happen? Is that too far out to think of? What are the moment we're in? So either of you to that question.
Yeah, Amandeep, begin. Then I'll...
Let Devdan go first. He has been quiet all the while. Yeah.
All right. I will just refer to something which happened today, which I saw a video of, which was quite disturbing. It was that Chief Minister of Haryana, who is a BJP leader, was traveling in a convoy and he was accosted by a group of farmers or angry protesters. And the video was extremely dangerous because I think the protesters were really angry and they nearly attacked him, in his convoy with police and everything, the army and all that. So our entire thing was a huge, like at one moment, the car swerved so hard that it probably hit some people as they tried to escape. So the situation is coming to this, and now what the police have filed attempt to murder case against those farmers who basically protested. So it is getting ugly, So what is happening is that even though the leadership of the farmers' protests are very calm people, very wise people, very aged people, but there are a lot of young people involved in it, and young people may not have that kind of patience as the elderly has. So I am after watching the video today, I'm dreading the scene that, BJP leaders and BJP politicians might get changed like this around India right now. And things can get really ugly. And once an ugly incident happens, it gives the license to the government to crack down forcefully, using the army or the police or something like that. So it can really blow up, So that after watching the video, I felt, that things can go really wrong. But I don't think government has to take back this law. There's no other option because the farmers are not going to give up, It is like Amandeep explained, it's a matter of faith. It's a matter of their relationship with their land, their way of life. It's a long history. They are not going to, it's about independence. They are saying we are not going to be slaves of the corporates. We are not going to be turned into bonded laborers. We are not going to lose our freedom. So it is more like a freedom struggle for them as well, that they want to keep owning their lands and do what they want to. They've been doing for generations, So unless the government backs down, all kinds of tricks won't work here. And I think it can get really ugly. And in that way that even violent and something like that. Because today's video was like an eye-opener for me, how the people reacted to this BJP people. Like people are losing their patience. This is what is happening right.
I feel the BJP is now caught in a no-win situation because the more Modi delays taking back the laws, the more unrest increases. And remember, this is about 30% of India because 30% of India are farmers and all farmers are unhappy. That is a huge vote base for the BJP as well. So if he now takes it back after 3 months, they will say, why did you wait 3 months? What were you hoping to get in 3 months? And if he takes them back, then his whole sponsorship has been by these crony capitalists and the big businesses of the country. And they will start pulling back from him because they have invested in him. They have propped up what is called a Hindutva government, a government focused on turning a secular India into a Hindu majoritarian nation, though they don't have the interest of the Hindu people also in their mind. It's just a very small segment of the trading class and what are called the Brahmins, and not all of them are bad, but that's the interest they have in mind. But they put up this government so that they could sell everything out. They could hollow out India. And that's why they made all these investments in this political party. And now, if it doesn't work out in their benefit, why would they sponsor a party like this? So that is where the government is caught. If it does not relent, its vote base gets lost. If it relents, then its sponsorship gets lost. And it doesn't know what to do. As far as scenarios are concerned, the farmers are committed to the long haul. And we have had protests in Punjab earlier in the 1980s, which lasted 16 months, 18 months, and that has happened. The commitment to non-violence is very strong, at least from the Punjab side, purely because Punjab knows that it has had to confront power many, many times. Its history is that, but even in the last century, it has had to confront power many times. And whenever it has remained non-violent, it has won. When it became violent, it lost. For example, the big militancy period that happened between the 80s and the 90s, Punjab turned violent and Punjab lost in it. So we know that experience. The big movements that succeeded through non-violence were the 1907 revolution, which happened, which was the Pagdi Sambhal Jatta one. The Gurdwara movement was completely non-violent. The Sikhs could take back their Gurdwaras from the British appointed priests. The freedom movement was non-violent. The state creation movement was non-violent. So all these movements which have remained non-violent have always given Punjab results. That is why they are focused on non-violence. Even the songs that are coming out, there is a huge cultural thing through songs, and Punjabi music anyway is famous all over the world, like everybody dances to it. They're all talking about keeping peace. They're all talking about patience. And this winter will pass. One more month and it won't be that cold. The camps are there already. Everything is sorted out, is gradually getting sorted out. The toilets, the water facilities, the food already they have brought with them. Each tractor that came with 2 trolleys. One full of provisions for the next 6 months and one with people in it. So they came prepared for the long haul. And it is very good that on that first day, this also we could put down. See, when the laws came, even before the laws became laws in the parliament, when the ordinances came, Punjab started its protests. For the last 2 months before 26th November, when they reached Delhi, Punjab was protesting on railway tracks, on bus stations, on toll plazas, which are there on the highways, on Reliance petrol bunks, on the Adani food silos, all those places, in the big malls, basically wherever they could hit the crony capitalists, And what the government turned it into is, okay, we will not give you coal then so that you don't get electricity, and then your own crop planting gets delayed, and all sorts of tactics the government used against Punjab at that time. That is why they decided, okay, let's go to Delhi. It is a right of every citizen of this country to be able to go to the capital. And yet, the state of Haryana, which falls between Punjab and Delhi, their police, they put up huge barricades, concrete barricades. They put up barbed wires. They dug huge trenches on the ground. They used water cannons. They used tear gas to prevent these farmers from coming to Delhi. And that is where Haryana farmers stood up with Punjab. And they actually brought down the barriers against their own police. And that is how they marched to Delhi on 26th November, which is, for India, it is the Constitution Day. That is the day on which the Constitution was completed in 1949, I think. And they came and said, okay, we have a constitution. Why don't we live by the constitution? Why have you inverted the constitution and made these laws? So the possibility of violence, Punjab is really cagey about it. It doesn't want violence. It wants it peaceful. But the state can do anything. It has done things when the citizenship protests were happening. They later created riots there. They carried out an anti-Muslim pogrom there in northeast Delhi. So we know the dangers of it.
So you spoke, you were speaking about the Hindutva project a little earlier. I just want to quickly address that also, because it's an important part of the overall understanding of what's happening in India. This incumbent government came in on that, like you said, their sponsorship, what you refer to as crony capitalism, which we have, Jason, both the Jasons, Yogeeta, and in other talks that we've done, we refer to them as the globalists, which is the Adnanis, the Ambanis, the Gates Foundation, Bloomberg, Omidyar, who's also in India. We refer to as the globalists, yes, whose interest it is to remove the nationalized protections of commonly owned national assets and privatize. Right? We're dealing with something like that very much here in Goa as well, with the Mollem forest, which is under threat of 3 major projects, one for energy with the trains coming in, that is going to cut through one of the most biodiverse regions in the whole world. Now, this is a communal asset. This is ours. It belongs to all of us. But these decisions have been made, again, during lockdown. These 3 projects were passed where now it's got all of Goa's citizens up in arms in a very similar way, protesting this, not allowing them to go in. It's a huge movement here as well. And there are many like this, as we know in India. But this incumbent government came in on the Hindutva project. What has been created in India is the strife of division, which has always been the methodology of hegemony, is divide and conquer. But the irony of it is, while it screams, India for Hindus only, and it screams about nationalism and it screams about Hindutva, what's actually happening is we have been sold out from under ourselves to imperial projects. We have been sold out from under ourselves to the globalists like an Adani, like an Ambani, and various others. Like I was saying the last time we met here collectively, on the pmo.gov page, after the meeting that Mr. Modi had with Bill Gates, his statement there clearly says, post the pandemic, we invite and welcome Mr. Gates to guide our policies on health, on education, on social welfare, on energy. It's right there on the pmo.gov website. So is this not seen by everyone, that it is nothing more than a device, that he has kept it divisive with the Babri Masjid, with the Hindu-Muslim strife, with Hindutva itself? It's a divisive tactic while we are being sold out from under ourselves.
I was very interested in what you're saying about how the lockdown has been used as a cover for privatisation, and it's interesting if we got evidence that this whole, what they're doing in the Punjab and Goa was actually planned some time ago, or if they've just jumped in quickly. I wonder if there's an answer to that.
How's the pandemic playing out and the role the pandemic plays in all of this, you guys? Anyone can answer that.
Under the cover of the pandemic, the Indian government brought these laws. The ordinances came out in June, and by September, when cases were peaking in the country, they held a 2-day parliament session and they bulldozed the laws through the parliament in the absence of opposition. The opposition was actually protesting outside the parliament. So they have completely used the pandemic, anticipating, hoping perhaps that nobody would rise against these laws because now they have become laws. Uh, their calculations were wrong. Uh, Now there are about 300,000 farmers who have ringed Delhi, who have sort of sieged Delhi, and there is a countrywide outburst of protests all over the states. So the government's basic idea has collapsed, that they thought they would ramp through this.
This protest is also an outcome of certain frustrations which have been building in the general populace for the last 6 years. And just to give you an idea how bad economically India has done in the last 6 years because of this neoliberal policies which has been introduced by the Modi government in India, is our per capita income, for the first time ever in our history, we have fallen 15%. Like we are much poorer and unequal right now than we were 6 years ago. That is, and in this, and simultaneously, the crony capitalists, about few industrialists, they have got enormously wealthy. People who are at number 40 or 50 in the wealth list is now within the top 10. So what has happened in the last 6 years through various policies, right from demonetization, which was done in coordination with the Obama administration and the Bill Gates Foundation and everybody else. And so we have become, so there has been a transfer of wealth from the people into the hands of the few. And it is going on, and people have been suffering one after the other because of the demonetization, then there's the technocracy, then the GST, then the CAA protest. Several things were going on. So suddenly when the farm bills came, people said, enough, we have to really support. Like, we have to support, and the people who is in the urban sphere, not connected to the farmers at all, like we and many others, they're saying we must support the farmers, let the farmers lead, because they're doing a much larger movement than just the farm bills. They're fighting against neoliberal policies. They're fighting against the very structure which is enslaving us. And we are becoming poorer, we have less money. So basically all these things, factors have compounded. Whatever happened to the 6 years, it is somehow or the other is leaking right now. It is not only the farm bills. I think it is larger frustration also how the country was being run for the last 6 years.
Yeah, it seems to be what we suspected, that the whole thing that's happening there and in Goa and other places is all part of a new world order scheme to take control of the resources of the whole world by any means necessary. And the pandemic, of course, is a plandemic, is a cover for that. But I'm interested to know also what actions are happening that we can support in England. If there's anything scheduled outside the Indian High Commission or anything like that, that would be good, and we would join it.
So
can I make a request? Can I make a request to international audience, actually? The biggest thing that any country can do for India right now is to tell the government to keep the protests peaceful. That is a huge deterrent for the government against using armed forces or armed action against the protesters.
So if I may say, what I got today from Navkiran, what I have been hearing repeatedly across the days of the protest and leaders speaking, they are not asking for anything. They're not asking for any donations, charity, none of that. Nobody's asking for anything. The one thing they have said they would like, and the way that anybody can help, is to put the word out, is to get the word out about what is happening in India, the scale of it, the seriousness of it, the ultimatum that has been issued to the government to repeal these farm bills and the other terms that I was talking about. There is a massive disinformation campaign that has been undertaken that's occurring across mainstream media and national media. The national media are being called Godi media. Godi means lap, so you can infer what that is implying for the media. So they have started a newspaper at ground zero in Tikri and Singhu borders that's called Trolley Times. And this is published, written, and issued out of the protesters from the community itself to fight this, to counter the disinformation campaign, to counter the national media's lies. For instance, you know, a few days back, there was a spate of headlines which said the correct farmers union, or the farmers union that is an alternative, that not all farmers are united in this, have come to the government, have talked, and they're very happy with the MSP laws. And a few hours later, the protest, the union leaders and the All India Kisan Committee, the actual protesters' leaders, gave a press conference clarifying they are very much united. This is an all India protest. It's not just about a set of people. It's over 500 workers' unions that are, and farmers' unions that are involved in these protests. And they completely detach themselves and, you know, are not associated with whoever this random union was that went and spoke to the government. Today, what has come across even from Navkiran is, you know, please let people know what is happening here. Please let the world know that this is a very real protest. These people are here for the duration, for the long haul, whatever it takes, yeah, in a do or die way. They are very aware of what they're fighting. Yes, going all the way to the New World Order and the technocracy and what is being attempted as a, you know, a uni-world government, as it were.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So the main thing is to get the word out that what is happening in India is bigger than anything else that's happening anywhere in the world in terms of a protest. In terms of a protest. Devdan, what you spoke to earlier, what you saw happen to the Haryana CM, I watched that too, and it was equally disturbing for me. Because what came up for me was, you know, it's inevitable. It is inevitable, even though our strength, and as Amandeep said, our strength is in the fact of it being a non-violent, peaceful protest, the largest ever in the history of humanity, as happened on the 26th, which was all pan-India wide, so over 250 million people involved, the biggest protest in the history of humanity. And now what's happening at the Singhu and Tikri borders is yes, it's ongoing, one of the biggest protests. What happened in Haryana to the CM today is very frightening, because it can be used for further nefarious purposes, as we all know, as we saw happen in Bolivia, you know, where the people's elected leader, the first indigenous leader in the world, that entire movement was subverted and made to the world, was said to the world to be a civil uprising, which it wasn't. It wasn't. It was a color revolution instigated the way that Bolivia's leader was removed. So what's concerning for me with what I saw today, where the Haryana minister was almost attacked by this mob of people, you know, if it crosses to violence, like Amandeep said, it can be subverted by many actors in this whole trajectory that's happening in India. So is that something that you think is possible, even on the big scale, the way these things move? Now, the powers that be have studied us for so long, have done this in so many places around the world. There's a system to it, how they get in, how they, you know, destabilize a country, then the IMF comes and they put in the loans, and then come the structural adjustments to meet those loans, and then comes the nationalizing of state assets, people's assets, the commons, all of which we've seen happen here, since 2014. Is there a chance that this protest, as it grows, as more of India comes into it, and it grows beyond, it's already leaderless in a sense, even though it's being led by Punjab and the union leaders, it's already leaderless in the sense that everybody is involved, everybody's united. I also saw another video today from Moradabad, where the police had blocked, again at the border, the farmers from, many thousands of farmers from joining in Delhi. I hear in Gujarat, many of the union leaders have been house arrested or jailed or otherwise prevented from, joining their contingents to it. So do either of you feel that this can be in any way subverted by actors who are not for the people?
I think they are all already like attempts being made to subvert the protest. People are saying, there are only few farmers protesting and all that. But what can happen is that, like I said, that since there's so many people involved, even though leadership is very wise and calm and basically convinced on the path of non-violence and patience, but there are younger people who might, a skirmish might happen or something may lead to something, naturally. Or something else can happen that some forces can send their own people and create some kind of violence and blame it on the farmers, and then they use the force which is necessary. So it is going to be a very complex thing. We really don't know what will happen and what role all kind of forces are going to play. Like there is the corporate interest, there's the political compulsions, corporate political interest, and then there are the transnational companies which are interested, and all these things. And I would just like to give you a quote which I just found today. It was reported by Press Trust of India from November 18th, 2017. A person we all know called Bill Gates came to India and said, this is the exact word, transforming agriculture into an efficient and profitable business could be the key recipe for transforming Indian economy. So this was said in 2017. And the key words are efficient and profitable business. So, and what is happening is exactly like that. Farming, which was not considered as a business as such, but a way of life, something sacred, something you do for your sovereignty, for independence, for your food security. There's more meaning to it. Is being packaged as a profitable and efficient and digitalized business. So when you are turning thousands of years old of tradition into business, it is not going to be that easy in a country like India, where still 50 to 60% people are involved in the farming sector.
I have a question for you both, Amandeep and Devdan. So from an international point of view, so from a UK point of view, and if I can speak on behalf of possibly even the US and maybe even Europe, the word of what is happening in India hasn't been getting out. I've been speaking to a lot of people who have no clue about the numbers of people on the streets that these farmers are literally camping out. I know we were talking yesterday, the hashtag Sikh has been suppressed, which I was really shocked to hear. I mean, things are being said all the time that just completely just shocked me completely. But these laws are being passed surreptitiously, which is happening all over the world in all different governments. Things are being passed straight away without debate. So obviously these farm laws are passed. I guess my question is probably threefold. So first of all, the 250 million pan-India protest on the 26th. If we could talk a little bit about that, because I think people need to realize that this is the biggest peaceful protest in the history of the world, and nobody knows about it. So this is kind of, we need to get this out, because I think this is going to really inspire the truth movement. This is really going to inspire the uprising around the world. They need to hear what these brave, courageous men are doing, and women. And you said you quoted there's 300,000 protesting in Delhi at the moment. Is that right? 300,000. Yeah, and what I also would like to know is a lot more about these farm bills and the implications that they have, not only on India, but the rest of the world, because isn't India probably number 1 or number 2 food supplier for the world? That's what I've read. So I think I just want to... I want to get across the enormity of this, because I think that was the purpose of, getting this whole thing together, is letting the world understand, the enormity of this protest, what it means for everybody, because it's critical mass. I was working out the figures, 250 million. That is what, 17%, is it 20% of India's population? I'm not sure, but it's a big number. If we look at the world population, 7.5 billion, that's still a significant number. So I guess I want to talk about, the importance of, for me, it's just getting this information out, but the farm laws, what are they? What do they mean? What are the implications of these laws?
We need to spend some time on this and understand a couple of things. First is that India is primarily an agrarian economy. Around 50 to 60% people are engaged in agriculture. About 30% are farmers. Another 20 to 30% are artisans, traders, laborers, and all those kind of people. So, and agriculture is the backbone of the country. Its role in GDP has decreased, but that's only because other sectors have taken over in the last few decades since neoliberalization in the 1991. Yeah. But as far as numbers are concerned, the maximum number are working in agriculture. And among them, about 70% are small and marginal farmers. What that means is they own 1 or 2 hectares of land, which is very, very minuscule. But there is a huge number of these people. That actually makes this sector the largest private enterprise in the country. For about 60 years back, when India faced a food crisis, we remember the Bengal famine of the 1930s and 40s, where 4.3 million people had died. And India decided to become self-reliant in food grains. Some of the areas chosen were Punjab, Western UP, and this part of the country, because this part had been developed by the British itself about 100 years before that to supply food to the entire empire at that time. So with good irrigation systems, with better hybrid seeds, fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides, and all that, the agriculture really took a great upswing here. And Punjab started contributing about 70% to the India's food pool, which means that it was taking care of 70% of India's needs. And Punjab at that time was merely 3% of the country in terms of land. Then Punjab got divided. So Punjab now is 1.5% of the country's land. It still takes care of roughly 40% of the food needs of the country. But over the decades, there have been great structural problems that have come up in the agricultural model of India. While various states have started doing better, at the same time, there have been structural issues which have come up, and which these unions of farmers and laborers, they have been protesting against the government to rectify these structural issues within the farming sector. All of that has now gone to the side with these 3 new laws that have come. So basically what the government has done is, this is a large sector. It is not doing very well. There are many issues with it. So let's throw it out to the private players, and it's pulling out of all control and regulation from the sector. Notice, as a developing country, when we protest, we don't really protest for greater freedoms. We protest for greater regulation, but not monopolistic regulation, not somebody regulating us, but for a better system which has inherent checks and balances so that the functioning is smoother. We are not only a very populous country, we are very diverse, and we are also very corrupt. So the small and the marginal people, they fight for rights. They fight for the state to do its job. So these protests are also about state not being allowed to pull out of agriculture. It's very strange, but that is what it is. Why? Because and as Devdan earlier said, it comes on the back of demonetization, which impoverished the poor of the country. It comes on the back of the goods and service tax, which actually hit the trading class really bad. And yet there was nobody coming out and protesting against it because everybody was feeling alone and lonely, which is another neoliberal thing, capitalism thing that happens to us. The reason these protests have succeeded until now, and it's almost 1 month, is because of the unions. They have held their cadre together, they're all disciplined, and they all obey an order, a system of order. It's almost like a military, to the way they function. Of course, there are dissonances within members or within unions are always smoothed out. They're always sorted out. That is why about 600 unions in the country right now are standing up as one unit. So what are the three laws that have come about? Don't go by the fancy names of these acts because they sound very nice, but they're actually very draconian. The first one is called the Farmers Produce Trade and Commerce Promotion and Facilitation Act 2020. What it basically means is that there is a state-arranged procurement system of farm produce. And now private players are allowed to come in and set up their own system of procuring the farm produce from the farmers directly. On the surface, it looks okay. Sure, there should be private players. But the farmers were never stopped from selling to private players even earlier. The issue is that this is surplus food that is being created. And this has to be bought by the state so that it can run its many other programs of food security for the country. So there has never been a ban on private players entering. Private players are welcome. This is creating an alternative procurement system, which initially will pay farmers better returns, and the state system will collapse, and then they will become monopolistic here. Then they will drop the rates of everything that they buy. So it is an insidious way of catching the farmer. The second is called the Farmers Empowerment and Protection Agreement of Price Assurance and Farm Services Act. This again sounds so nice, but this actually allows for corporates to enter into contracts with farmers, small and marginal farmers, group them together into 30, 40, 100, make larger plots, and sign a contract with them, and then push them to produce what these corporations need. Fine, there is no problem with that as well. But the point is that it has already happened in many states. In Gujarat, it happened. In Punjab, it happened. That corporations sometimes don't buy. Or corporations sometimes don't give you the correct price, which is, even the last year's price, because there's a glut in the market. Or corporations just reject your produce. Now, where should a farmer go if this is a problem? They should go to the court. But this law stops the intervention of courts. It says you can only go to your subdivisional magistrate, and we know how corruption works. Corruption works in courts as well. But here the legal recourse of a citizen to a court is stopped by the law. The third act is very frightening, only because there has been an Essential Commodities Act in India for a long time, for about half a century. We are a poor country. We also have many natural disasters. We need help many a times. And there is a law which prevents stockpiling or hoarding of farm produce so that everybody can get whatever food they need. Now they are amending that act to an extent that any trader can stockpile as much grain, as much farm produce as they want, which will basically be that the traders will control the market. Now, the argument here is, the laissez-faire argument is that, but free market, good. There are many traders, there will be competition, prices will be low. The point is, there are not too many traders. There are only one or maximum two traders. So they will basically monopolize the whole market. And every single food item that we buy could become scarce, its rates could jump. The middle class won't know how to manage its kitchen accounts. The farmers will still eat, but the middle class will suffer first. And the ones who will suffer from this really is that India has an elaborate food security program. About 67% of our population is dependent on the government to buy grains at subsidized rates. That whole system will collapse because government is not procuring, government is not storing, and government is not any longer giving it to these people. So at the cost of roughly 67% people of the country at one level, the poor, and at the cost of another 60% of the country who are involved in agrarian life, if the government wants to push these bills, it is a clear-cut recipe for mass killings in the country. Already the pandemic has completely skewed our job securities, it has skewed our earnability, it has thrown out so many millions of people out of jobs. And now if they can't even get food, that's a catastrophe waiting to happen.
I'll just add two more points along with what he said. As fundamentally, the thing is in one line, farmers get less, consumers pay more, and the corporations make all the money. So this is fundamentally what the system is going to be put. And the second issue which I want to point out is that, what has happened in Indonesia, like large tracts of lands and the forests have been cleared and they have been turned into palm oil plantation. And this palm oil plantation is only meant for the exports. Those are not meant for the consumption of the domestic market. Then what is happening is that your land is being taken away by corporations who are producing produce which are not meant for your people and which are meant for the export market, whose profits are going to go to the corporations only. People out there is not going to get anything. So what can happen in India is, because I just remembered this when I saw a report in the newspapers 2-3 days ago, that United Arab Emirates have signed a deal with the Indian government to produce it. It's worth about $7 or $8 billion deal that vegetables and fruits and all will be produced in India, just meant for them. Means they will use the land and our farmers and the corporations to produce fruits and vegetables whose sole purpose would be to export it to United Arab Emirates for their consumption. So what is going to happen is that, which can happen, which happened in the British colonial times, the colonials went to the farmers and forced them to grow opium. So they could export those opium to China, make a lot of money, not produce enough food for the local population. So when a drought came, massive number of people used to get killed every 10 years or 15 years. And, in famines in India has killed about 30 to 60 million Indians because of the system, because they did not produce enough food for the people. And whatever was being produced, a large chunk was being taken away for other countries for export and for consumption by the others. So this danger becomes really there, that our land is going to be used to produce vegetables, fruits and all for the international market or for where they get the best price. And we won't have enough for us and for our poor people in India. So this is also a big point to be added.
Obviously, the question I want to ask you after everything you said, and thank you so much, it's very interesting. Obviously, the big question for me is, what's the best solution? Okay. An overall best solution. I mean, my opinions on it. They always render people virtually helpless. That's the way it works. And profit and power and short-term greed always comes before people's happiness and people's future. They don't care. And let's be quite frank, ultimately, if it wasn't for the internet and people watching, they'd probably just kill everybody. That's the way it's always worked. It's disgraceful. So this is highlighting this. But ultimately, like I would say, people have got a tremendous capacity to endure suffering, and they're not they are patient people. People are people of peace. But sometimes I think people have got to show their teeth a bit, and hold the government to ransom and remember their power, that they actually have got complete control over the government if they assert that power by doing what you're doing, blocking the road. But that's what I really want to ask you. I mean, for me, the best solution is to completely be independent of government, completely, somehow. That's the only way out of this for me, I think, for what I think, because they will always be trying to control and browbeat and frighten and, take over and ruin the beautiful system that's happening there. But I know I probably said too much, but what would you say is the ideal situation to get out of that situation, into another sort of thing, really? If you could, what's the ultimate thing?
I don't think that absence of governance will lead to better, fairer solutions. I think, and neoliberalism comes from this statement by Ronald Reagan, who said that government is the problem, not the solution. So, but that is not the case in countries like India. We need better governance. We need better reforms which are meant to solve problems rather than exploit problems. What is happening is that we love change and reforms. We want that, but whatever are coming are not really helpful to raise the standard of living of the people, like people or the farmers or whoever, the laborers, but it is just meant to give profits to the corporation. So reforms and changes are coming in were all good, nice, like Amandeep pointed out, nice words, very nice presentations and nice, but ultimately the agenda is, corporate profit, So unless we, I think, separate the big money and the corporations from the government, like unless we have independent government, we won't have independence in our lives. This is what I want to say. If the government is under control of corporations, they cannot offer us independence. They cannot offer us freedom because they have to work in a different agenda. They will come to fool us every time, So we have to think how we can separate big money going into politics and corrupting the entire system, how to have, independent government so we may have an independent life. Unless the government is independent, we won't have independence because government will always intervene, There's no country on earth which doesn't have a government.
That's very nice, but the whole idea of, as Devdan said, neoliberalism rests on government not being too effective, but then it goes into the hands of manipulators, It's nice to discuss bigger issues, but I think let me just reinstate what are the main demands the farmers are making and what are we looking at in that sense, answering you also, Jason. First of all, the big demand is that repeal all three laws. And the reason for that is now the government started negotiating and it sent amendments to the laws to the farmers. If you look at those amendments, they vacate the laws of all their strength. They completely hollow out the laws. But the farmers did not agree with the amendments. And that is because if you leave the law is like a box. You leave the box open. Tomorrow the government will fill something else into the same law. To make a law is a bigger step than to make a small little amendment into it and then do whatever you want to do with that. So that is why the farmers have said that no, you have to repeal the laws. And remember, Indian agrarian system is already in deep crisis. We have lost 300,000 farmers and laborers in the last 20 years to suicides. There is an immense amount of disease that all these pesticides and fertilizers are bringing in to people with kind of food we are producing. The whole system needs to be restructured, reorganized. So the success, if it is that the government repeals the laws, does not mean that the agrarian system is now taken care of. That will be the first step to start building the agrarian system, actually. And interestingly, the government already has a blueprint for it. There was a very eminent scientist, M.S. Swaminathan, who made a report called the Swaminathan Report, which is now about 13 years old and there has been deep crisis in the agrarian system in the last decade. Yet it is quite a good blueprint if you want to start with that. The BJP government actually promised an implementation of the Swaminathan Commission report in their 2014 elections. That is how they won the farmers over to vote for them. And then they did nothing about it. They did these laws. So my simple point is that if we win, it just means that our work has begun. That's the other demands that the farmers are making is that there is a ordinance already on the privatization of electricity. all over the country, the farmers are saying, no, you cannot do that. We need state-run thermal and other systems of electricity production so that we get our thing. The farmers are asking for minimum support price. Now, to really understand minimum support price, it is, of course, the price that the government determines on each crop, and there are 23 crops listed in that. And yet, hardly 6% of the farmers of the country get minimum support price. That minimum support price is also not the real evaluation of the crop, if you were to really check. But never mind. To me, the minimum support price demand is actually a demand for basic income guarantee for the farmer. That if they have worked, if they have grown, then at least let them get back some amount of money from it. So minimum support price is that demand from them. There is another demand. There is an older story of Punjab creating pollution for Delhi because it burns the paddy stubble, which is actually completely hoax. Now many studies have come and they've demolished this idea. Agrarian pollution is anyway 8% at its peak. And if you are going to penalize Punjab for stubble burning, then would you actually reward Punjab for growing so much wheat and so much paddy, which actually produces oxygen for you? So it's a bogus kind of a thing. The main pollution is because of petroleum coke, which the US dumps on countries like India. This is the petroleum waste from the refineries, and it is used in industrial units, and that creates 50% of the pollution. Another 25% is from vehicular pollution. And yet the government was trying to make a law which heavily penalizes a farmer. They're saying, please keep that law to Delhi alone. Don't put it on us. We can't tell you what law you should make in each state, but don't make it a national law. And the fifth demand, which is mixed, not all unions are raising it, but there is some, is of the political prisoners. That we must release the political prisoners who have been taken into custody over the last many years by both governments, the previous government and this government. There is a way in which the government likes to curb any dissent, and the demand is that you don't curb our dissent. There is one more clarification I want to make regarding these laws. I believe that the farmers are actually standing for the Constitution of India, and this is why I feel so, because the Indian Constitution has 3 lists in it. Some are the points in the union list, which the central government can decide. Some are points in the state list, which the state governments can decide. And then there are concurrent lists, which are shared by the center and the state. Agriculture as a subject is part of state list. It is not part of the center list. The union government can actually not make any laws on agriculture. Each state has to make their law. And yet the government has gone ahead and made these 3 laws. How did they do that? They looked at Article 33 of the concurrent list, which is about trade of commodities. And they said, oh, here is a loophole. We will use this loophole too. And that is why, if you notice, each of the laws is actually called trade and commerce, and some version of that. The point here is, and it is a very critical point, is that a farmer is a producer. He is not a trader. And this point needs to be labored in the courts so that actually the laws can be taken back on a constitutional validity of them. A farmer does not trade, a farmer produces. And then the marketing happens of the produce. He is not going around gawking his stuff various places. So actually the laws are unconstitutional, and the farmers' protest is actually to say, get back to the constitution. We have a way of running this country, and let us run the country like that. So I hope I've answered some of your questions. I mean, we don't know. It is a flux right now. We don't know who will blink, what will happen. But I think this movement, and it has within the diaspora, the Punjabi diaspora around the world, many like me stood up and started writing, started organizing things. In the last 7 years, there has been a reign of terror of the Hindutva propaganda machinery, and these guys said, okay, we will make our own Twitter. And they have taken apart the whole propaganda machinery. I mean, it doesn't apply to them. They have defeated it completely. Many have written articles in various places. Many have tried to speak. Of course, it has still not reached because a lot of work that is happening on ground is happening on internet television, not the mainstream television, which very rightly Deepti said is the Godi media, but actually amateur footage. Every cell phone can be made into a camera and they are shooting and they are putting up, they are sharing. The issue is language, that they are doing all this in Punjabi or in Hindi. I live in Bangalore, actually in Kannada. Here as well, I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it from Tamil Nadu in Tamil, but these are not English. And that is why it doesn't go out as much. I think there is need for anyone who is bilingual and finds anything to just, put out a comment on it and share it off. That is the only way. I completely agree with Navkiran. We have to spread the word. At the protests, what the farmers are doing, and that is a model again, something very critical is the idea of communal eating. So when I was telling you about how they demolished the barricades of the Haryana police, the next thing the farmers did there was actually serve them food, to serve policemen food. The same police which had tear gassed them, which had water cannoned them. And they took this tradition into their camps now. There is free food for anyone who goes there. In fact, the areas next to these highways to the city are normally the slums. And the slum people are coming, flocking together. So they realized, okay, so many children are coming. Let us start libraries for them. Let us start makeshift schools for them. So it has actually transformed the whole area around where they are living right now, outside Delhi, on the highways. And this sense of seva, this sense of offering to the community is also a very, very Punjabi and a Sikh trait. The Gurdwaras are known to do that all the time. Any Gurdwara will give you sanctuary and food and stay. It has worked as a great goodwill weapon for the protesters. Now the very police which is standing there is eating 3 times from the protesters. The very police which is standing guard there is going and sleeping in the trolleys of these tractors in the night because they're also cold. It is almost 0 degrees, temperature, Celsius. So this whole spirit of sharing has worked beautifully, and it is now going into all other spaces like education, like help, like aid to each other, and all that. That is why they're saying, don't give us monetary help. Don't even give us too much material. We don't really need it. What we need is to move your conscience and to say, why are you scared? Stand up to these bullies. They have anyway, hacked at the Constitution of India for the last 7 years. And now we are not going to allow them to do it. So it is that arrogance that is being challenged. And as of now, it is 28 days and more. Let's see.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. It's a great revolution of conscience. Like you said, it's a very exciting time, and the policemen are sleeping with the protesters. I mean, what an amazing situation, and sleeping, and eating with them. It's a great bringing together. I think the system is dividing, but also by dividing, it's strangely bringing people back together. Thank you so much for that. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. Amazing work by you all. Thank you.
What is the connection with these current protests with India's colonial past?
Thank you for that question. That's the question of what inspires these protests. About 110 years back, when the British had come to rule Punjab, which was the last kingdom to fall when they annexed India, they realized that this was now, they were touching the border of Tsarist Russia, and they needed to take their military there to the border. And so they needed to lay railroads so that the military can travel. And when they realized we are laying these railroads, why not make better use of this land. And it was a land full of 5 rivers, 6 rivers actually, very fertile. The people were mostly agrarian. So they started developing the canal colonies, what they call, linking the rivers with each other, flowing water here from one to another, and moving large number of people from, at that time, Eastern Punjab, still Eastern Punjab, to the areas of Rawalpindi, Montgomery, Faisalabad, and these Lahore. And they rehabilitated these people as landowners and asked them to grow crops. Punjab was at one time the granary of the British Empire itself. Punjab was also sending a large number of soldiers. In fact, in the First World War, there were about 1.2 million Indian soldiers, and out of that, about a quarter were from Punjab itself. In the Second World War, there were 2.5 million Indian soldiers. More than a quarter were from Punjab. Actually, 40% were from Punjab. So they were doing both. They were, as soldiers, saving Europe, and as food producers, feeding the entire empire. But the British were also devious. So in 1901, they came up with the Land Alienation Act, another law, which actually curtailed the farmer from trading his land with each other. They created a category called the farmer, the Jat, who is called. They brought it into the census and all sorts of things. And then in 1906, they came up with a colonization law, which forbade the farmer family to inherit the land if they did not have a male heir. If there was a daughter on top of the children, then their family lost the land. People were very angry with this. And then they also imposed a water tax on the people. They were also angry with that. Now, 1907 is the 50th anniversary of the first Battle of Independence. And it is at that time that many leaders like Sardar Ajit Singh, Sufi Amba Prasad, Lala Lajpat Rai, they started a movement called the Pagdi Sambhal Jatta movement, which is basically save your turban, O farmer, save your dignity, fight for your dignity. The threat to the British at that time was that these guys said that if you are going to pass these laws, we will not send our men to the military. So when you are protesting, basically, you need to understand who is against you. Does that person have a conscience or not? So most of our independence protests were against the conscience of the British. You do hunger strike, you do fasting, you do those kind of things. You push the opponent morally to talk to you and negotiate with you. But Punjab's way of protest at that time itself was not this, which is more Gandhian. It was, okay, we cut off your economic line then. You won't get a supply of young men to go into the battles that you want us to go into. That forced the British to repeal the laws. And this movement now is inspired from that movement. That is why the demand is to repeal the laws. The interesting thing here is that in 1907, it was the British who was the colonizer. In 2020, the farmers know it is the capitalists who are the colonizers. So their battle is more or less the same battle. And I hope the results are also the same.
Jason, I just want to add to this question. The first peasant revolution under the colonial British happened in 1859 in Bengal, which was called the Indigo Revolution. So indigo is a plant or whatever, and where from there a blue dye is made. There was a great demand for the color blue in Europe. So the Britishers forced a lot of farmers in Bengal area to grow indigo. But the price they used to give them is like if the indigo market price is say 100, farmers are getting less than say 1. It is like the market price is 100 times more, and the farmer doesn't is getting very less. And the British used to give them money to grow, and they used to go into debt. Then the British will try to come and claim the land. So this produced obviously a revolution which spread from Bengal and went into eastern India, which was called the Indigo Revolution. So this happened in 1859, which was repressed. Then after that, somehow or the other, the extreme exploitation stopped after 1862, when an act was passed by the colonial British to basically to be less exploitative of the farmers, the law which passed in 1862. So for 3 years, there was this first peasant revolution called the Indigo Revolution, which happened in Eastern India. Then, of course, then Amandeep told you in 1907, another revolution happened in the west of it.
I have another question. It was something that we spoke about yesterday, about how the media are suppressing this information getting out. And I was really surprised to hear how, just from my notes, how phones are being confiscated, how signals are being blocked. Can you talk more about that? Because that just shows how desperate they are, that they're running scared of the truth. That shows a lot of fear on their part, to me. That's to both Amandeep and Devdan, whoever wants to.
See, the main thing about the mainstream media around the world, they're all neoliberal, okay? So they are not going to show you, they are not going to tell you 250 people went on a strike against neoliberal farm policies. So everybody is, nobody, there's so many wonderful stories of great strength, and so many women are in the protest. There was the photo which went viral yesterday was a Jeep which was being driven by a 65-year-old woman along with 4 other elderly women driving down from Punjab to Delhi. So you have a group of grannies driving down and joining the protest. Amazing story, but it is not getting covered anywhere. This is the kind of story which should be covered on CNN and BBC and the rest, but they are not covering at all, because obviously they are not going to tell Europe and America that, look, farmers are protesting, there's a lovely protest going on against terrible farm laws for new. They're not going to tell that, So this is the reason. This also shows the media bias in the world, like all the mainstream media of all the country have become similar, there is hardly any kind of independence left in any mainstream media anywhere. So what is, I saw a good video being done by, say, internet Redfish, like it is from, I think, America, and which is a left group who has done a nice video about it. And they put it on social media and people are sharing. So it is, I think in the West, only people I think younger people probably know about this because they follow some more internet than the mainstream media. Otherwise, I don't think mainstream media will cover it at all, and cover it correctly. And obviously, there is a repression going on. Like they have put jammers, there are trucks with jammers, high-tech jammers, which have been put into the protest sites. So the protesters cannot use their mobile phone, cannot, upload pictures or videos or do Facebook Live, all kinds of things. And also what happened for 3 hours, about 2 days back, the Facebook pulled out the page, the homepage of the Farmers Union protest. So that page was actually unpublished. So there was enormous kind of protest and outrage. And people also in America, some people went outside the Facebook office and protested. So then after 4 or 5 hours, they basically republished the page. So you can well imagine that Facebook, the government, the corporations, the media, they're all together, We are the people and they're all together connected. They're doing the same thing. So that is why these kind of webinars, and this is thanks to technology also, this will pass to whoever will see them. Yeah? And if Amandeep wants to add something.
No, on the ground, what happened is when the farmers reached there, the lapdog media, they came to interview them. And the farmers chased them away. They said, where were you for 2 months? We were protesting in Punjab. Why couldn't you come? So there are big banners around the site, which says that so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so TV is not allowed here. Whenever you go to ask questions to somebody or to interview, they ask you, where are you coming from? Show me your badge. Because we are fed up of misrepresentation. We decided that it's okay, let us not be represented, but let us at least not be misrepresented. And in the meantime, we have set up our own system. The Twitter trends every day, one or the other hashtag. Of course, it's in India. We are seeing it in India. How you see it around the world is your algorithms, right? The same thing with mass media print. They froze. I noticed initially they froze for 2-3 days, and then they gradually opened up again. They realized this is too much to not cover, not talk about. And now there are some mass medias, mainstream mass media, which is reporting it, at least in India. How we go abroad is through channels like these. I mean, this is exactly why we are sitting here. And it's very incredibly important, as you know, the numbers, the dimension of it. But initially I was asking friends who had gone there. I'm going there in 2 days. I will be in Delhi for 2 weeks at least. I was saying, what gives? I mean, what makes you feel that they're going to win? Every single person said, look at the eyes of the protesters. You see this in their eyes. And that actually is true. Because they are completely resolved that this has to be repealed, and then we will start constructing. Like the solidarity of women, it's the first time that so many women have come out. There is also, because it is India, there is also a caste angle to it. These classes of people who are protesting are the dominant classes in the rural landscape of the country. They are the farmers, they are the landowners. So they use help on their farms from the lower castes. This time, the lower castes are also standing with the higher castes because they realize it is the battle of the political economy of India. And if they lose it, then it's all gone for them. But like we need to reconstruct the agrarian sector, we also hope that this protest brings about that egalitarianism between the two castes, and the violence and the superiority between them and the fights between them also come down, because here they are standing completely with the other caste. I think that is another big takeaway from these protests.
I saw on the news, I think it was Al Jazeera last night, and they were saying, tens of thousands of protesters. So my question to you is, or to any of you is, what are the actual numbers of people that are participating in this? And then the second part of that is, how many different groups, I think you might have mentioned, but how many different groups, and what's the makeup of those groups, like religious groups, unions? Can you give us a better idea of like how massive this is? And also, like, how do we know like what those numbers are? I know it's really hard to estimate when you're talking about this, but would one of you like to answer that?
So, when these farm bills were passed during the lockdown, the farmers in Punjab had already started rallying around this, protesting against it, gathering. They have been protesting since the farm bills began, since September, in fact. So it had already been going on in Punjab, just no one knew about it. And, the pandemic and whatever else was going on, it didn't get out that far. But when they called for a strike, when they began towards Delhi, when they started coming towards Delhi in a very organized way, as we're seeing now, they called for a general strike. All India farmers unions, all India workers unions, for the November 26th. And that did happen. And it was over 250 million people who went on strike, on a general all India strike. It's called a Bandh, right? Bandh means stop. Yeah. So it was an all India Bandh. And it happened again on the 8th. It happened again on the 14th, right? That they called for a general all India strike and Bandh. So that is a very factual figure. There were 250 million people plus that did go on strike all over India, protesting in unity against these farm laws. The protest sites now, the two big encampments, which are in the Singhu border and the Tikri border, we don't, I mean, there hasn't been a survey done as such, but internally the word seems to be that it's an approximation of about 300,000 people who are encamped. The national media, the mainstream media, the government keep saying that, you know, there's maybe 10,000 or thousands or however few thousands. That's not true. I mean, it's
I knew that wasn't true.
Yeah, it's verifiable by any image you see, any drone image, any, you know, a picture taken from a high altitude. You can see it very clearly. That even just from a visual, it's not 10,000. There are over 300,000 people encamped in the Singhu border and the Tikri border, and there are thousands more joining on a daily basis. And even if they're not marching towards Delhi, in their own home region, there was a huge protest in Kolkata on behalf from the farmers in Bengal and on behalf of solidarity with the farmers encamped in Delhi. So it is, as I've been saying, this is huge what's happening. It's all India wide. And what may have begun as farmers' protests has, like the two, like Amandeep and Devdan spoke to as well, it's involved, you know, all workers' unions, not just the farmers' unions, but all workers' unions. There are teachers' unions who've joined in. There are lawyers' unions who've joined in. You know, there's various different services, professions, unions that have joined in.
Yeah, you know it from how much food is being consumed. So it is in the range of 250 to 300,000 people who are camping right outside Delhi. But there are thousands who have started off from various states already and are already reaching. The main states here are Punjab and Haryana together. Then there is Western Uttar Pradesh, which is on the other side of Delhi. Then there is Rajasthan, which is south of Delhi. Farmers from Gujarat are landing there. Farmers in Maharashtra are already protesting. In Karnataka, where I live, every single district headquarter, there has been a protest. In fact, our state assembly has been under siege for a few days. Tamil Nadu is protesting. So roughly, if you look at the Indian map, I mean, the left of India is all bursting out. And there have been protests in Andhra Pradesh, in Odisha, various parts of the country. I mean, well, one number is, of course, the one we are talking about, 26th November, but it is an ongoing protest. So there is no real count of how many are coming in. Very, very simply, 30% of the country has to rise up to this. They will rise up, if not today, then tomorrow, because otherwise they will be wiped out by the corporations. The number of organizations, there are roughly 500 farmer unions in the country, out of which there are a few umbrella unions, like what Deepti was mentioning, the All India Kisan Sangharsh Coordination Committee. There are about 39 unions actually now from Punjab. There used to be 35, there are 39. Plus another 100 odd unions of other kinds. For example, the truckers are joining the protest, you know. A huge number of truckers are joining this protest. In solidarity, of course, teachers are also with them. Other classes of society are also with them. So it is growing. It's a big thing. It just needs an acknowledgement from the government, and they will see how many are really into it. You know, fear that has been built in the last 7 years, you can't simply throw it away one day. You know, you have to come out slowly from it. Punjab, of course, never accepted Modi and Hindutva itself, you know. So that's a different case study, you know, and that's a book I wrote also. But these protests are going and they're growing and they will go on until the government repeals the law.
How long do you think that will take?
Pardon?
How long? I mean, it might be a silly question. If it's weeks or months or a year of protests, how long do you think?
The union leaders are saying be prepared for at least 6 months to 1 year.
Really?
But they are prepared for 2 years also. I mean, it's not a big deal.
No.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, the
they go
government would
back.
have to give in the face of that, wouldn't they?
The government will have to do something much more quickly. I mean, they should basically have agreed right in the beginning. I mean, there were no consultations held, no farmer groups were invited to frame
No.
the new laws,
That's
nothing, no discussions were done. It's just, actually, if you read the Indian Constitution, look at a few random laws and look at the language of those laws, and then look at the language of these laws. That's also published. There's a marked difference between the two.
Yeah.
The laws framed in the 1950s by the founding fathers of the nation were very different from this corporate hack that has come in now. This is completely a corporate language. It's done by a consultant.
World order, mega corporation rule. I think what we should do in Britain with this is, obviously, because there's huge difficulty in mainstream media, but this video being made now by, you who are making the videos here, we ought to just do our best to get that everywhere in Britain, and that will, through the alternative media. And that's the main contribution we can do, I think. Otherwise, any protest held at the Indian High Commission or whatever, we should join in. But as the message seems to be, just get people to understand. Because it will also give confidence to us in Britain, you see, when they see this happening. And also, I think the New World Order is going to be shaken when the Indian farmers win.
And if someone's on the ground in India, they could be maybe live streaming. I'll have them live streaming to my show if they want to, and I can upload on my show what's being said at the protests, or some film work would be quite good.
Yeah, I spoke about this already in Truro and in Oxford, but we'll speak about it regularly in all my speeches now.
Piers, I'm wondering what question do you think the British people would have for our guests here, in terms of like helping them to understand what's going on, or maybe some misconceptions?
I suppose the activists would like to know, how did you do this? There's thousands of answers to that, and the next one would be, well, why is it important for us in England? And well, I think that's pretty obvious, because if the New World Order quakes in one place, it helps us all. But if we could get 250,000 of any group in Britain marching, that would be fantastic. Now, of course, there's different situations everywhere, but I don't know if you can answer that really, because the question, how do you do it? Because you managed to do it because of the situation in India and historical things. So you can't necessarily translate that into the situation in Britain. But I think that one of the key lessons coming out from what you say, it is, as Jason just said, it's about persistence and having a clear message which people on the ground in India relate to, because their livelihoods have been stolen. Now, in Britain, of course, everything is much more confused, because they are giving people money in order to, well, they're bribing the trade unions in order to give up their whole future by destroying jobs and giving them to mega corporations. So the trade unions in Britain are betraying the working class, whereas what you've got in India is the organised real unions of people are, of course, representing the working class. So there's a lot of lessons that come out, but I'm just trying to think what simple messages might come out. You have to work on that. But whatever, a good film that we can put everywhere will be tremendous, and then we can have discussions around that film online or in meetings, which of course we'll be holding in defiance of any lockdowns they've got knocking around.
Can I just add one thing that we haven't touched on, which I think is super important, because I know, Piers, you say it's New World Order, but this all ties into sort of Agenda 21 sustainable.
Oh, absolutely, it's the same.
It's the same thing. They just like to sugarcoat it with the Great Reset now, don't they?
Of course, yeah. It's evil. Yeah. But, people haven't heard of Agenda 21 much, but they understand new normal, and we say new normal equals New World Order, and then we explain Agenda 21. But it's a good point that hasn't been revealed enough in Britain by us, whereas in America people have a better understanding of Agenda 21 than people on the whole do in Britain.
But I have read that they're trying to displace, because one of the goals is acquisition of and ownership of land.
Yes.
I have read somewhere that they're trying to displace 400 million Indian people from their rural townships, villages, into the cities. Can you comment on that, Amandeep, Devdan, Deepti, any of you?
Well, it's very likely, because that's what they want to do in Britain. They want to close all farms and automate them and make farms in Britain even less labour intensive.
I'd just like to say something about, going back to what Jason L asked about, what's possible here with the protests that are happening in India with regards to the government. And Amandeep spoke briefly to that, saying it's a different thing that is happening in India than perhaps in the UK. Although at the end it all becomes about, you are fighting against the powers that be. But the difference is pretty crucial here, because in the West, in North America, in the UK, whatever forms of protest there are, and there are many more in the UK than there seem to be in the US, right? Here they're not looking to for freedom as such. It's like Devdan said, as Amandeep said, we know that this is the technocracy. We know where it ties into Agenda 21 and how it plays out in each locality and each region. What these protests are doing then is, blocking the technocracy. Yes, this takeover of land. Yes, this privatization of the agrarian process. And what these protests are about is that we are asking our government to represent us. We're not asking for a freedom. What the farmers are saying at these protests is that be a democracy. Be the government of a democracy versus a corporatocracy. And in North America, in the UK, in Europe, that process is almost complete. These are corporatocracies. They are already corporatocracies, even on the front end. Here, it may be a little more veiled. Not anymore. We know who paid for the campaigns. We know Mr. Ambani and Mr. Adani find great favor with the incumbent government for those reasons. It's the same in the US in the way that the presidents get elected. It's about who's putting in the most campaign money and who they owe. Therefore, then they owe obeisance to and must act out for. Of course, it works in the same way here. But what's beautiful about these protests is that we're not saying down the system. What's being said here is work to the system. We have a system. We have a constitution. We have a great system that when it works really well. We've had one of the best welfare systems even with something like the ration card, which assured that every Indian was fed and every Indian had what we needed to survive, right? And survival is a very different thing in a country like India than it is like in a country like the UK. And I said this with all due respect to the protests that you're all having in the UK. And Piers, yes, I've followed it to some extent. I've seen Sandy speak. I've seen you speak at the protests as well. But I said this yesterday during a brief meeting that we had. It's a very different thing. Like, you see that these people have been here for a month already. And like Amandeep said, they're prepared to go 2 years if need be, but not relenting on what is being asked here for the government to perform as a democracy for the people, right?
Yeah, I understand. That's a crucial point. Yeah, very good.
And in England, it just gets down to something like this. Would you be able to hold the duration of a protest beyond a weekend, beyond a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or beyond a full day, say Saturday morning to Saturday night? Would you be able to gather enough people to come and stay and not leave until the government relented to their demands? Would that be possible? Or is it that, in the West, as I know as well, that we've become so comfortable that our comfort level of encamping on the roads using, just flyby setup toilets, for instance, the comfort of the Western life has lulled it into complacency. Whereas here, the people who are there, for them, comfort is not even a factor. If you see what they've put up with, if you see the water cannons that were blocking them, if you see the tear gas that was put on them, there have been deaths now. There's counting, death statistic as a consequence of these. The battle is different. I know
Absolutely.
we're all fighting the technocracy, but the battle is very different. And I think the technocracy, the way that it's coming into India, like I said earlier, with Mr. Gates being thanked by our prime minister on the government page, by the forces that an Adani and an Ambani and various others who are in India right now, like an Omidyar, which Alison Hoover McDowell speaks extensively about, has written extensively about. These are all very racially colonized projects.
Yeah.
These are racial colonial projects.
Modi's probably already been paid off by Bill Gates. Modi, that's for almost, I would say, for sure.
Yes, these are racialized colonial projects. We spoke about this, Yogeeta, in the women's roundtable that we did as well. And it's the global South, as it has been through several hundred years of colonial history. It's the global South that stands to pay the price, has paid the price for the colonial era that led into 1947 and our freedom.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it stands now again to pay the price with the oncoming technocracy. We already are. It is the global South. It's the resources, it's the nature, it's the human labor, it's the human capital, it's the human data from the African continent, the Indian subcontinent, the most populous regions in the world that stand to pay the greatest price. So what's happening right now in India is so important. It's such a big deal because they're not just fighting for something like the MSP, although that is the tool of the protest. That is the expression of technocracy at the point that it's meeting the protests. But what they're fighting is so much bigger. It's so much bigger. This is what's standing on the front lines of technocracy working in a place like India, where it's crucial for them. It's crucial for them to make it work here in order for it to work elsewhere. And it's not working. It's been blocked.
No, that's superb. Your question, would people in Britain demonstrate and stay in one place for more than a weekend? Well, the answer to that is possibly, but in very small numbers. The serious numbers you're talking about, currently they would not. That is something we have to work on. Of course, most people probably think that if they make enough noise, they can convince their MPs to oppose what the government's doing. But I think the movement has to take up a more of a political role and actually organise politically and physically prevent the implementation of these rules. And what you're doing in India is an inspiration. We have to find out how much of that can be moved into us.
How are the people in the cities in India viewing the protests?
This has also been an opportunity for a lot of urban India to learn about rural India. Something I have been doing almost every second day at least is talk to some or the other urban print journalist and try to explain to them the rural reality of India. And remember that at the eve of partition and independence of India, India was 75% agrarian. It is still about 53% agrarian. So 23% people have moved to cities. So most of them who have come to cities are actually just one generation or two generations out of the villages. It is incredible how modern education, modern technology has overawed them so much that they feel that, you know, um, they have forgotten what the rural life was. They can listen to their grandparents and they will know what the reality is.
Mm.
This is the disconnect that happens. But we are learning, and I think there is a sudden education course also going on in the country. A lot of, and I tell them, write it in my book also, a point that Devdan made that if you if you look at just your dining table, and if thing X cost X amount, when it was sold from the farmer to the trader, why has it become 3x by the time it reaches you? Who is actually taking the money there?
Mm.
It is the agri businesses who have come in who are taking the money. All their job is to, if it is paddy, then they basically dehusk the paddy, they package it in bags, and they transport it to your dining table. And for that, they charge 2 times more the price, the base price of the thing.
Yeah.
And it is these agri businesses what we are fighting against, actually. The way the BJP spins the narrative is actually, oh, the middlemen are really harassing the farmers. That is why we are creating these private procurement centers where there will be no middlemen. The middlemen never go away from anything. The middlemen just change shapes and they come in. And the real middlemen are actually these agri businesses. So even when they say that, okay, you can trade anywhere you want, now that was a rule which was already there. These new laws have not made it. So the farmers of Punjab, Haryana, Western UP at least, they are saying that why can't we trade with Pakistan, with Afghanistan, with the Balkans, with East Europe, with South Russia?
Yeah.
These are countries which really need food. They really need our produce and they will give us a good price. These countries are less than 1,000 miles away from us, while South India is actually 2,000 miles away from us.
Yeah.
What is this nation that you are looking at? When the
Yeah.
farmer is not benefiting from it. So there is a whole urban India which is now learning about rural India. I keep getting messages. I have been using Facebook to actually elucidate each small point so that people get it somewhere. And so it is going on. It's a process.
There's a lot of support from, at least I'm from Calcutta. And Calcutta, I think a lot of urban support, a lot of people I know, they are actively supporting the farmers and they are actually keeping the chatter on the social media alive. That is one way to negotiate the whatever misinformation being spread through the mainstream channels, is to keep the chatter alive on social media. And that is going on very well, I think. And lots of people are contributing to that from the urban space. Yes.
What are some of the actions that the police have been doing to suppress the protests?
Initially, what happened once the farmers decided that we're going to go to Delhi, the government in Haryana and elsewhere did a lot of stuff to prevent that. They didn't want the farmers to go to Delhi. But as a citizens of India, we have a right to go to a capital and do a protest. The farmers wanted to go to a place called Jantar Mandir in Delhi and the Ram Leela ground, which is another protest site in Delhi, and do that protest out there. But the government wanted to prevent them from coming. So what they did was they employed the police and also the CRPF, is basically sort of paramilitary police, not really the army, but the paramilitary police. And they dug up trenches, they put barbed wires, they put shipping containers, they put concrete blocks, and they use water cannons, and they use skunk water also, that, like sewage water, which is about 2 years ago, the government of India told the Supreme Court that in order to do crowd control, they are going to get a technology from Israel, which is called the skunk water, and we're going to use it. As a government said this to the Supreme Court of India as a method of crowd control about 2 years ago. It is there on print. So that same technology has now come in, was used on the farmers. And after the uproar and all that, then the skunk water stopped, then only the water cannons went on, So it was winter in India right now, in North India, gets really cold. and all the farmers had to endure. And a lot of farmers are elderly, they are 60 plus, 70 plus, who had to endure like lathi charge with the baton, and the skunk water and the water cannons and the ditches. And the government actually dug up our highways. They put trenches 10 feet, 20 feet down all around. So a lot of effort was done to prevent the farmers, but the farmers reached the borders of Delhi. Yet they're standing there right now because I think they cannot go in because now they are still being blocked as such. And also what is happening is on other states, like whenever certain farmers want to go to Delhi, the state leaders who are under the BJP control are preventing them. And there have been cases like their trolleys and the tractor keys being taken away by the police, so they cannot drive down to Delhi. So lots of other repressions are also going on in other states to prevent the farmers to organize and reach Delhi. So all these methods are pretty much there. As you know, they put up also the jammers where you can't use your mobile phone. So lots of stuff is going on. So it is sort of a sort of hybrid war going on the citizens, so they don't protest and they scamper and all kinds of things. Yet it is going on. So despite all this.
Yeah, just a small point here. Of course, they are being stopped from going into Delhi, but when they did not want them to go to the main protest site, they actually made available another ground, which is really out of Delhi. It's called the Sant Nirankari ground, and they said, okay, you can go there and protest. We'll put up tents for you and all that. That moment, the farmer leaders all got together and they realized that there are two options we have. One is to go into some place and be surrounded by the police, or actually lay siege on the whole city.
Yeah.
It was a strategic decision to take that they said, no, we'll lay siege on the city. Out of the 7 highways, we will block 3, 2 more to be done in the next 3-4 days, and gradually completely choke the city. And that's the only way the government will listen to us. So again, as I said, it is the economic lifeline. In 1907, it was the recruitment into the British military. And now it is, okay, we stop the city from functioning.
Fantastic.
Actually, the next big thing that the farmers, it is on their mind as well, that if they choke Delhi, the rich and the middle class will still survive. It is the poor who will perish. And that is why they are planning already that we will hold these, what I called langar earlier, which they are already holding. They said we'll go into Delhi and hold langars for the poor people so that they don't suffer. Our fight is with the government, not with the citizens. And that is a very clear line that they have drawn, that we are doing this for strategic reasons, and we will try to see that nobody really suffers as people, as individuals, as citizens, but the government suffers.
So how are they doing that? They're getting food into the poor people in the city while they're sieging it?
They will, if it comes to that, they are prepared to do that as well. I've been listening to leaders say this, and as of now, they have miles-long jams on the roads. It's like one of the jams is roughly 10 miles long. The trucks and their tractors and their trolleys and their encampments and their toilets and their everything. In fact, there are 2 or 3 big Sikh public service sort of agencies. One of them is called Khalsa Aid, one is called United Sikhs. They have actually been providing relief in Syria, in Iraq, even to Rohingya Muslims. They have come up there and they are setting up huge tents. They're giving them jackets and they're giving them bedrolls. They're putting up foot massaging machines. They're putting up washing machines. It's a whole different game out there. And this group itself, I heard their head on the first day of the protest, he said to everybody, please do not donate money to us. We already have more than enough. If we need money, we will get back to you. My cousins are working on ground and they tell me when I keep getting queries, and they said, tell anybody who wants to give money to keep that money, and we will tell them what exactly we need and we will ask for that donation. Ideally, what they're really asking for is mosquito repellents. They're asking for cold medicines, cold and fever medicines, just general things. They're asking for sanitary pads. These are the kind of things they're asking for once they have reached there. Many farmers have their prescriptions or don't have their prescriptions, but are on long-term medication. They are asking for how do we get this? So now I think today is the 20th, I think, doctors' camps being organized there. Doctors are coming in and giving free aid to the farmers. Whoever wants a checkup done, whoever wants basic prescription done, they're doing it on site. So it's taking on a whole new shape. It's a city within a city, actually.
Jason, we asked, how are they feeding people? How are you getting inside? How are they doing that? So what Amandeep was talking about, it's a tradition called langar, and it's a Sikh tradition, which is, all the farmers give 10% of their yield to the Gurdwara, which is the Sikh temple, if you will. And so it assures that the community is always fed. The Gurdwara prepares a langar, what's called a langar, which is basically anybody can come and eat. They feed everybody. That's the tradition.
I understand.
So what's happening at the protest site when he refers to langar, this is what they mean, that it is part of the Sikh tradition to feed.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah.
Because that agrarian system comes from, it's a way of life.
Yeah.
Like Devdan said earlier, it's not a profession, it's not a business, it's a way of life.
Yeah,
and part of that way of life includes langar, which is feeding people, giving as you get, circulating that benefit. So that's what's happening when he's talking about at the encampments, they're feeding everyone. It's
fantastic example.
The langar. And another thing I wanted to say is, we were talking about the police being fed by them as well, and the police being there, now having become, sleeping in their trolleys, etc. There's a couple of pretty senior police officials who've resigned over these protests. There's a couple of DIGs, very, very senior police officials who've resigned because they want to take a stand with the farmers, right? And
that's fantastic, yeah.
And always in India, since independence, there's been this phrase that's part of, I don't know, a national ethos, if you will, that says Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, which means long live the soldier, long live the farmer.
Okay.
Because we saw those two functions. We see those two functions as being crucial to the sovereignty of a nation, is the food sovereignty and the protection. So Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, soldier and farmer. And one of the things that happened here, and possibly for the first time in India, is that these two that are known to be united as part of a solid relationship were separated. The Jawan was put up against the Kisan, right? And a lot of the influence for this also comes from, correct me if I'm wrong in this, this is my own family's history, my own Punjabi family's history, my father's side. A lot of the farmers, the landowners from Punjab, the young men go to military service. A lot of the young men are in the military, are in the police, and they do a career service of a lifetime, after which they retire and go home to the farmlands to take over from their fathers, their uncles, and become active farmers. So this tradition also exists, is where the young men of the farming communities will serve in the military or will serve in the police, a career, retire, and then go back and take over on the farm. So there is a very deep relationship between farmers and soldiers, the farmers and the military. A lot of the farmers are ex-military men, ex-policemen themselves. The empathy, for instance, in Kashmir, The troops that are stationed in Kashmir, which has been locked down since August of last year, August of 2019, right? Most of the troops that are in Kashmir, and this is the tactic, I mean, the military uses everywhere, right? The troops that are in Kashmir, a lot of them are from South India. So between South India and Kashmir, there's literally nothing in common at all. Not language, not foods, not customs, traditions, nothing. There's nothing in common. Like, it's literally like Japanese and Greek being put together. Like, you'd have nothing in common except your humanity. But it's a tactic that's used so that there is no empathy between the occupier and the occupied, right? Because they don't speak a common language. They have nothing in common. That is not the case over here. That is not the case in this protest, because like I said, the military, it is mostly made up of, an economic class that is rural and come from farming families. And they serve a lifetime. And when they retire, they serve a lifetime in the military, in the police, in the IAS, government services. And when they retire, they go back to their farmlands and take over from their fathers and elders and uncles to then continue as farmers. That's why you see the age of the farmers who are encamped in Singhu and Tikri are also older. They are the elders, as it were. I have a question, which is, can this whole movement be co-opted? Is it possible that this can be co-opted or subverted or used by, if one government is coming down, is there other actors who could, I asked this before also, are there, is there any danger to this movement's authenticity and veracity being compromised in any way?
Farmer unions have been on the ground for 30, 40 years. They have seen through various governments, they've seen through their tricks, and the only way it can come down is if they all compromise. But with a decentralized leadership, actually, it acts as a check and balance between them also. They won't allow one or two to compromise, because they will get discredited. This is really a huge churning going on right now. And only the authentic ones stay. A few of the inauthentic ones have already fallen apart, right? So, and second thing is that there is so much youth here that this movement has actually taken a life of its own. No single label that people have, the Hindutva propaganda machinery has tried to stick to it, has stayed for more than 48 hours. Every label falls. The first label which got me very involved, because I lived through the 80s, being born in a Sikh family, I know what happened with us when Operation Blue Star happened, when Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated. My parents became refugees. I didn't meet my own parents for 7 weeks. I was very young that time, but still it happened. I have trauma of that. We have trauma of militancy in Punjab for 15 years. Guns have been pulled on me. Police has beaten me up. All that has happened. So what I'm trying to say is that all these guys have seen through all these tricks of the government. And the youth that is standing there is very, very focused that we have to get this back. We have to get the laws repealed. Otherwise, even on the day they proceeded to Delhi, their leaders were actually trying to say to them, oh, there are barricades, be careful, don't break them. And the youth was like, hello, we are going. So it is not only that these old leaders are in charge. Right now, it is a tiger and it has its own momentum. Now, how can you displace the tiger or how can you turn the tiger around? I don't get it right now. We will have to see a very, very crafty government which might be able to do something. I can't rule it out. But the only way I see it dissipating is if it turns violent. And that other farmers from other states have to know
It's like judo, isn't it? Sometimes you only know what's going to happen when the opposition does something else, and then you know you've got to do that, and then you know you've got to do that. But the end goal is definite, which is good. No
Right.
compromise. No compromise.
Even if some leaders compromise or say, okay, this much is fine, and we are going back, they'll say, okay, go back. But the others will stand there. And it will never become such a small, in fact, one of the biggest unions, which is at Tikri border, they are completely committed people. So I won't want to single out any one union because but there is a huge commitment, resolve, and I don't know how you can turn the tiger around except through violence, because once violence happens, the state gets a chance to get in. It can, do anything. So,
unlike the West, you're prepared to die for the next generations. We need to learn from you here. With that, it's always about us selfishly. Like the Red Indian used to look seven generations down the timeline, and so do my.
But that is exactly what the farmers are saying. This is a battle of our existence, and why did the old come out first? It's a question to be asked. I mean, every family sent someone or two or three people. Why did the old step out? They said, if there is government action, if there is armed reprisal, we will die. But you have to live.
Wow.
Right. So, and also, I mean, I don't want to project Punjab as the only one because I think it is a pan-Indian movement. It willy-nilly is Punjab leading, but the concept of martyrdom itself is a very strong Sikh ethos, And I mean, there is also, I mean, we feel religiously, we feel that it's a good life lived if you died for a cause. And that is exactly the reason why. And you have to look at it at the socio-cultural 3,000-year-old history, So you know that you have to fight and you may die, but you have to defend.
I think the farmers have said it. I've seen various interviews where they said exactly the right thing, that future generations will question us what we were doing if we didn't repeal the law, because we cannot enslave the future generations. It is about enslavement, and it is also about freedom and protection of their way of life, the connection to the land, and also their faith. Their faith is connected to the land and to farming. And Amandeep, would you please tell this? I just heard a Sikh gentleman saying something from the religion where they put farming as one of the highest professions, isn't it? Farming is put as the highest profession by the Sikh religion. Will you please add something to that?
It is Kirt Karni, Naam Japna, Vand Chakna, which is Guru Nanak, the first master's basic injunction to the community, is do an honest labor, meditate on the name of God, and share your wealth with others. This remains the three pillars of Sikhism. Beautiful. And farming is considered honest labor. It's one of the most honest labor. Of course, not in its modern mechanized form, because you're basically polluting the environment, you're playing with the soil, you're degrading the water. But if you were to really go back to natural farming, I think it's the most honest labor you can do.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you guys all for joining us. And I wish you all the best and appreciate your knowledge sharing.
My name is Navkiran Nath. I'm professionally a dentist and I just completed my master's in film studies from Ambedkar University, Delhi. I'm also a student youth activist and I'm active from last 12 years now. I'm working with ISA, All India Students Association, and RYA, Revolutionary Youth Association. Now I'm sitting in a tent at Tikri border farmers protest site, and I'm in the farmers protest from day one. That means 27th of November 2020. So being a young activist, I realized one thing, that many of the youngsters who are there at these protests, this is the first time they are participating in such kind of a protest, and they don't have any political experience, or they are not politically engaged somewhere, ideologically engaged somewhere. So we are organizing many things, like we are running a library, Shahid Bhagat Singh Library here at Tikri. We are also running a newspaper called Trolley Times. We are also screening films on the name of Trolley Talkies. So I think with these kind of activities, we are trying to critically engage those youngsters for whom this is the first time. So I think from these protests, the one thing I'm hoping to accomplish is politicization of the youth, which is participating for the very first time in such a big mass movement. So one single message which I want to communicate to the people who are listening to me today is, one should not limit this protest to just the farmers' protest, because I personally think that this is a collective anger against the corporate houses which are looting India from last almost 30 years. Even in the past, the Indian governments did sell our public sector to the hands of private companies like Ambani, Adani, Birla, Tata. So, and as a result of that, today the young people, we don't have jobs here in India. Only in Punjab we have nearly 70 lakh unemployed youth. So I think this is a collective anger against the big corporate houses who are looting our country, our resources, hence an anger against the capitalist structure. I won't say particularly about the farmers, but yes, people do have misconceptions about Punjab as a whole, which is majorly an agrarian state. People have a certain kind of imagination about Punjab, mainly generated by Bollywood, our film industry, that Punjab is a very prosperous state. The farmers in Punjab, they are very happy and prosperous. I think that's one misconception that people do have about Punjab. But the reality is totally different. The reality is that the majority of the farmers are hardly meeting their ends nowadays, and farming is no more a profitable profession. That's why the younger generation, the generation doesn't want to go into the agriculture anymore. So I think that's what farmers are fighting for today. They are fighting for their rights. They are fighting for a profitable agriculture. They are asking for MSP, the minimum support price, so that they will be able to get the price for their labor, for their hard work. And that's why this fight is really, really important. Also to break those misconceptions that people have in their mind outside of Punjab, and like sitting across the borders maybe. So talking about the numbers, I can say more than 2 million people are directly involved in these protests. People are sitting in and around Delhi, and it's not just about Punjab. People from Haryana, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and even Maharashtra, they are also protesting against these laws. Some people are sitting at other borders of the Delhi. Some people are sitting back home and protesting against these laws. So we can say more than 2 million people are directly involved. And also in Punjab, there are small protests going on at the toll plaza sites and also in front of Reliance stores and other old protest sites where earlier the protest was going on. So yes, one can say that more than 2 million people are directly involved, and indirectly there are like many more. As you can see that across the globe people are protesting against these laws and in solidarity with the protesting farmers here in and around Delhi. So the number is quite large. Yes, people from different caste, class and professional backgrounds are joining these protests. Here I want to share one small incident. At Singhu border, I met one hairdresser named Sukha or Irshad Mohammed. He was there to serve the farmers. He was there to give them free massage. So when I asked him that the Godi media is saying that these protests are just about the farmers, then why are you here? He said, no, the farmers are fighting for us. That's why I'm here. I want to serve them in my best possible way. So as I said earlier, this is a collective anger against our government's love for the corporates and our government's ignorance towards his public. So, and another thing is, now these protest sites are their own kind of cities. So we have people from all backgrounds, the people which we need in our day-to-day life, but they are present in these protests not as professionals or not as the people they are what they are doing in their life, but they are here as protesters. They are here in solidarity with the farmers. They are here to demand or to fight for their demands. Yes, people from all religions are uniting on this one issue because these three laws are against farmers, and farmers doesn't have any single religion. They come from different religions. They are Sikhs, they are Hindus, they are Muslims, they are Christians. So yes, people from all religious communities, they are uniting on this one issue. And also the third farm law about the essential commodity, that's gonna affect all the people who eat grains to live, to survive. So that's gonna affect all of them. So it's not about religion, and that's why this protest is also not about religion. People from all religions are united at the farmers' protest. As we discussed earlier, that this movement is a fight against the corporatization of land, and this model of corporatization of land came from the West itself. So now we are demanding that the land should belong to the people, not to the corporates. So the West should also rise up for the same. The West should also fight for the same. Yes, the idea of repeal does resonate in these protests. On one hand, we have the spiritual philosophy of Sikhism, and also on the other hand, we have our historical background of political ideology, which we take from Shahid Bhagat Singh, Kartar Singh Saraba, Shahid Udham Singh, and our Gadarites. So yes, we have both, and I think only united we can win.